G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to MagzTV and the Rundown Under, the video segment that I do once a month where I get to talk about some various things that are going on in the gaming industry and otherwise chat about the status of the channel and give you guys a bit of an update on what is going on. And I've got a couple of things to discuss this month. For starters, I'm sure most of you have noticed over the month of April there's been a noticeable lack of War Thunder videos and a noticeable lack of videos in general. So, we'll start with the War Thunder one, because that's honestly the easiest one to explain. After the recent April Fool's event, where the submarines were put in to have a bit of a play around with, there was of course a mini-patch which disabled the submarines. And something happened in that patch. I don't know what it was, but I started getting packet loss of anywhere between 10% up to around 50% in every single battle that I played. It essentially rendered War Thunder unplayable for me, and it was only War Thunder that this was happening in. Did not happen in any other multiplayer game that I have. So essentially I've been waiting for Gaijin to unbreak whatever they broke, and they managed to do that on the mini patch that introduced the cruisers and the most recent naval test. That seems to have fixed the problem, so I was able to participate in the naval test. Unfortunately, I didn't get any recording done, because by the time I checked War Thunder, not expecting it to actually work, it was already on the very last day of cruises, so I nearly missed out, but I did manage to get a couple of hours with them, and War Thunder is now functioning, so I should be able to start recording again. But yeah, for the last month, or almost a month, the game's been essentially unplayable. Thankfully, I was able to put together some video from the naval test by recording the replays, which are available after the event itself has been removed. Thankfully, otherwise I would have been in a world of trouble here. So, probably get onto that next. What was my opinion of the cruisers? Meh. I can't really think of any other way to describe them. The cruisers, there was nothing wrong with the way that they've been modelled, but they didn't really feel any different to destroyers. They were a little bit slower and a little bit worse on the turning. They could take a few more hits. They had some slightly bigger guns, but they didn't feel so much more powerful as to be really all that different from the destroyers. In fact, you know, if I didn't know anything about ships and I was sat down in front of War Thunder and nobody told me that there was a difference between the destroyer and the cruiser classes, I probably would have assumed that they were exactly the same class. They played pretty much identical, and more than that, they felt almost the same. They did look good. There's definitely some work that needs to be done around the wakes around the hull. It actually looks like most of the wakes have been happening, or were happening inside of the hull, which makes me think that the cruisers are currently sitting on the animation for the destroyers in regards to how they actually interact with the water. And as I said just a moment ago, there was nothing really wrong with how they were modelled. They operated under exactly the same system as the destroyers. You range the target using the find range that will localise your guns to the target, and then you left click to fire your shots. The more shots you fire, the closer your accuracy will get. With a few adjustments, you can accurately lay shots on targets at, well, I was accurately hitting targets at between 6 and 7 kilometers with no problems at all. Essentially, if you had direct line of sight to the target, you could get your guns on them and actually hit them. The anti-aircraft fire is automated on them as it is with the destroyers, and they have a crap ton of guns that can be fired at aircraft. In fact, they look like floating airfields when they go off. Yeah, so there was nothing particularly wrong about how they were modelled. I couldn't give you an answer on what I would change, but they were uninteresting, I guess is the best way to put it. I didn't find the introduction of cruiser class to really change much with how the beta felt in comparison to when there was just destroyers in the last beta. And essentially that's why I'm doing a little bit of a segment on the War Thunder cruisers here instead of doing a full video, because I don't really have that much to say on it. My opinion is, if Gaijin was hoping that cruiser class introduction would be the massive, you know, the silver bullet or the magic arrow that was going to make naval forces suddenly very appealing, I don't think it is. I don't think it's really going to make much of a difference whatsoever. And yeah, it's really as simple as that. So, moving on from War Thunder and cruisers, what the hell happened to the channel over the month of April? There were bugger all videos released over the entire thing. And I know, and I apologise for that, but there is actually been some reasonably good reasons as to why. First, obviously, at the start of the month I said I was going to take 5 days off, took that off, it was fantastic, it was probably the first actual holiday, quote-unquote, that I've had in a couple of years. Most times when I take time off for some reason, or I'm not producing content, it's because I am doing something that is unavoidable. It's actually relatively rare for me to take time without having something that I need to do stuff on my own time. So yeah, that 5 days was fantastic. Unfortunately, I came back from spending time with Dead Meat and Grievous, came back home, and started getting pains in the chest. And with those came a shortness of breath and aches in the arms and in the muscles, and it was generally pretty horrid stuff, and I was really unwell for actually about a space of a week. And, you know, during that, and obviously following that, I of course was running in and out of the doctors and getting tests done, because the second you mention to a doctor, I've got pains in the chest, they go into absolute panic mode and start jabbing you with every needle that they've got to try and work out what's wrong with you, and plugging you into every machine that they can find to check you out. What I can tell you at this point in time is that my heart appears to be perfectly fine. My overall health is actually excellent, despite the fact that I'm a little pudgy around the midsection. I let myself go a little bit, and I probably need to hit a gym. I'm actually in really good health according to all their tests. What I can't tell you is why I had chest pains or shortness of breath. They have absolutely no idea at this point. So yeah, at this point that is still ongoing. Thankfully, most of the pains have gone away at this point. I'm just really sore. Kind of like the soreness you would get after doing an extremely long run or a marathon. You know, all the muscles ache afterwards. And that's basically where I'm sitting at the moment. And I still, to this moment, have absolutely no idea what caused it. I've still got a couple more doctor sessions to go through, but thankfully I seem to be coming out of whatever the hell it was. Yeah, it has not been fun, as you can imagine. But yes, that's why I haven't been doing a lot of content over April. I've either been in a doctor's getting poked and prodded, or I've been not in a fantastic condition to actually make content to begin with. But that, of course, does not mean I have not been playing games. In fact, I've been putting a stupid amount of hours into the new Battletech game. I think I was at 81 hours before the game was even released. At this point, I think I'm over 120 and still ticking along. Still have not finished the main storyline yet. I have been nicking off doing mercenary contracts and playing Pokemon with Battlemechs, trying to catch one of every single example that is inside of the game. And it's a lot of fun. I really, really am enjoying it. I have been holding back on doing a bit of content on it, however, quite deliberately. I wanted to give everybody that was really interested in the game about a week to get ahead of where I am. And the main reason for this is the core of the Battletech game is actually storyline driven. And while the storyline is a little to the predictable side, I will say that much, it is actually quite well written, and I have been enjoying it, even with its a few of its sci-fi tropes and a few fantasy tropes in there as well. It's still overall a pretty well written and pretty well executed storyline, and it is very seeped into the lore of the Battletech universe, which I've been a fan of for absolutely years. So I wanted to give everybody who was really up for this game, who's been waiting for this game for some time, a chance to, pick it up and roll with it for a little bit, get a little bit ahead of the storyline before I started my series, because it's almost impossible to avoid the storyline missions because some of the coolest stuff happens in those. And it also gave me a little bit of time to practice various things within the game, so I wasn't actually starting the playthrough with absolutely no idea what I was doing. And I could really start to use the rules to my advantage. Because the important part you need to remember whenever you see anybody playing Battletech, or if you play Battletech yourself, is not to look at this as a real-time strategy game, or even a turn-based strategy game like XCOM. This is a tabletop. It's been translated to digital format, but it follows tabletop-style rules. And much like any good tabletop, the rules are actually quite in-depth. The surface layer is pretty straightforward, but once you start really digging into the rules, you can really start to play around with exactly how certain systems within the game function. For example, there is an ability you can train a pilot in which will increase your battle mech's initiative level by 1. Now, the initiative level is the system that decides which mechs should move in which order, in particular light mechs moving first, then mediums and heavies and assaults. But there is also a special ability that you can use that will stack with that pilot trainable ability that will also increase your initiative level by 1. Which means I have a pilot in my Battletech game that is trained in both of those and always uses this ability, who can get an assault mech to move in the medium mech phase right after the light mechs, allowing me to essentially deploy the biggest, heaviest and most powerful mech that I have available, and one of the most dangerous mechs on the battlefield that you can potentially get, before anybody else even gets close to being able to do the return to me, giving me first strike capability on everybody. And this is just one small example of some of the interesting things that you can actually do with the rules in this game once you understand them. It's really great. I really do enjoy the game, and now that about a week's gone by, and I'm obviously feeling a little bit better in this regard, I'm going to be starting off from the point that you take over the mercenary company, because at this point I think I've already shown off the earlier betrayal and the events that occur during the trailer and the sort of the establishing story for Battletech. So I'm going to start a new game that will be playing from the moment that you take over the mercenary company, and playing the storyline and just doing some general mercenary missions from that point on. And while I'm at it, I might actually go into some of the lore of the Battletech universe, because as I said, I've been a fan of this particular universe for many, many, many years. I was actually in primary school when I first encountered this. Battletech and Warhammer were really my go-tos when I was a kid, and I had volumes of information on them. I've always toyed with the idea of talking a little bit about Warhammer for lore, but let's face it, there's a lot of people out there that do it already and are fantastic at it, but there's not so many that do Battletech, so maybe I'll run over a bit of the lore as a side project, because there is a lot of it, and it is pretty cool. Another game I've been putting a little bit of time into just recently is Frostpunk. Frostpunk is another survival city builder, this one based in a steampunk universe where the entire globe is basically freezing into a giant snowball, and you have to survive for as long as possible, preferably out-surviving a massive storm that is going to try and kill everybody inside of your city. It's a hell of a lot of fun to play, and there's a couple of different scenarios that set up different situations that you will have to survive through. The issue that I found with it so far is replaying these scenarios after having beaten them once, there's very little that actually changes, at least in terms of how events unfold in each of the scenarios. Now, there is a custom mode that allows you to adjust some sliders, allowing you to make the scenario either more difficult or a little bit easier, depending on which way you want to go. But the way it unfolds doesn't seem to change. There's a few little things that shift, but not by any major amount, which does sort of limit the replayability. Once you've beaten a scenario 2, 3, 4 times, yeah, that's kind of it. You sort of know what's going to happen, and because of some of the bonuses that happen if you make certain decisions at certain times, because these do not change, or have very limited amount of change in them, you can manipulate these in order to make even the more difficult playthroughs significantly easier. But anyways, this is just my initial thoughts. I will probably have a review up on the channel in sometime within the next 7 to 10 days on the game. There will probably be a review for Battletech as well. So, other than that, I've been flying flight sims as I do. I've been flying a bit of DCS. There will be a DCS video coming up very soon. Just started up an IL-2 campaign. I'm going to be showing that off for those of you who don't have IL-2 or haven't had a look at the new campaign mode yet. I'll be going through how it operates, how you create your campaign, select your squadrons, and going through the campaign, as it were, alongside with doing some multiplayer, obviously. Now, the other thing that I do want to add before I bring this one to a close here is I do have a couple of events in planning at the moment. I do not have a date for you at this time, but there will be an announcement reasonably soon for a War Thunder event. It is most likely going to be Unmarked RB. I'm still setting up the mission layouts for that one. And there will be an IL-2 flyout on the Unprofessional server in the very near future as well. An official one, a large one. I'm just waiting for a couple of things such as birthdays and so on to get past, because it is that month of the year for me. Yeah, other things to add. I will be doing a few giveaways this month as well. I have a whole bunch of Steam keys on this end, which I intended to give away in live streams that have been building up because I keep forgetting to give them away. So what I'm going to start doing is sticking a couple of keys in the video descriptions of the videos that I'm uploading. I'm also going to try and remember to give away some of them on my streams from this point on. So yeah, there will be, make sure you check the video descriptions, there might be Steam keys sitting in there, and if you're the first person to get them, you might get yourself a free game. Anyways, ladies and gents, hope you enjoyed this little bit of an update. Next video, I'm not entirely sure what it'll be. I'm working on about 3 different videos at once at the moment, because I'm trying to catch up to make up for the lack of content in April. So I'm not sure what the next one will be. It will be very soon, probably within the next 6 hours or so. Anyways, guys, till then, take care.